Justine Waters picked up the phone when she heard it buzz. It was a message from her husband, Tom, who had been out of town on business for the past few days. She unlocked her phone and read the message. "Business is finished here," the message read. "I'm on my way back now. The dinner table is booked for 7 p.m. at Mario's restaurant. I'll see you there. Happy anniversary." There were no loving endearments or heart emojis. It didn't really surprise her. For some reason, Tom hasn't been very sociable lately. "See you later," Justine texted back. "Happy anniversary. Love you." She sent a message and put her phone on the bedside table, hoping to see an answer. At least something. Everything would be fine. But there was no answer. Justine looked at her watch and realized that she had just enough time to get herself in order before meeting her husband. She sighed, got out of bed and headed to the bathroom to take a shower before meeting her husband. "Who was that?" Jake Carter, the man she'd just spent a few hours with, asked. "My husband," Justine said. "He said he was coming back. He's already booked a table for us at Mario's for tonight. It's our 5th anniversary." "Your 5th anniversary, right?" Jake asked. "I thought you said he was back east." "Yes, he was there," Justine said. "Apparently, he managed to finish everything early. I need to call my mom, see if she'd mind looking after little Jacob for a while longer." "Okay, then go back to bed," Jake said with a sly grin. "Maybe we can give Tom a little present." Justine snorted at that. "I'd love to, Jake, but I really need to clean up a little bit, and I don't have much time," she said. "Fortunately, I have clean clothes here that I can put on. You shouldn't meet your husband in the clothes I was wearing here. It's wrinkled and stained. Do you think he knows about us?" Justine shook her head. "No, I don't think so. He's been very busy with something lately. It took up almost all of his attention. He rarely talks to me and almost never does anything with the child. It's like he's in a completely different world. How long are you going to lead him by the nose?" Jake asked. Justine shrugged her shoulders. "It's hard to say. He's a good breadwinner. I know he would be a great father if he wanted to. Do you think he knows that little Jacob isn't his? If he knows, he's not saying anything. I can't imagine that he would let something like this happen without mentioning it to me. Well, I'll be there if you need anything. Just warm it up for me, okay?" she said with a sly smile. "You're going to get this, baby," he told her, returning the smile. Justine went to the closet and took out a clean dress. She couldn't believe how much of her wardrobe was in this closet and not in the closet she shared with her husband. Justine looked at the chosen dress, trying to remember if Tom had seen it before. It was blue, fell about 3 inches above the knee, and revealed a rather deep, seductive neckline. She was pretty sure Tom had seen him before. If not, she would just tell him that she had just bought it. Jake understood this at first, but since little Jacob was born a little over 3 months ago, he began to pressure her to have Tom clean her with his tongue. Justine told him it was dirty and rude, and refused to disrespect her husband in this way. It was bad enough that she slept with Jake, and it was even worse that she gave birth to Jake's baby, but she would never do that. After the shower, Justine combed her long dark hair until it was just right, dressed, and applied makeup. Satisfied that she looked and smelled good enough to pass Tom's test, she kissed Jake and wished him good night. "Will I see you at the office tomorrow?" "What is it?" he asked, looking her up and down. "Of course, my love. But today duty calls." She picked up her purse and sauntered out of the room. Tom Waters took a drag on his cigarette, sitting in his Escalade in the parking lot opposite Mario's. He had just received a message from one of the private detectives working for him that Justine had left the luxury condominium owned by Jake Carter, her lover for almost a year and a half. He looked at the photo of her in a blue dress sent by a private investigator. It wasn't the dress she'd worn to Carter's apartment, and of course Tom hadn't seen it before. He wasn't surprised. Justine was right about one thing. Tom was in the East, but returned a day earlier. He was told in no uncertain terms that he had a serious security breach that needed to be fixed immediately. He was told that if he didn't figure it out, they would. They, of course, were a federal agency whose existence the public was not even allowed to know about. Tom remembered how nervous he had been sitting in the office of the one-eyed man he knew only as Alpha One. Only a handful of people were allowed to know this man's name, and Tom wasn't on the list. "You have a serious problem, Waters," the man said. moving his head in a way that reminded Tom of the actor who once played Moses. And when you have a problem, we all have a problem. Solve this problem. Quietly. Or I'll do it. Yes, sir, Tom said. He was smart enough to know that this was the only answer Alpha 1 would accept. And he also knew that Alpha 1 had no qualms about making people disappear. He had heard stories about how Alpha 1 once destroyed an entire beach estate along with everyone inside. Tom shuddered at the thought. Justine thought Tom was just a famous traveling salesman who traveled the country selling his wares to various companies looking to upgrade their security systems. But Tom was much more than that. Of course, he did sell security equipment and supervise the installation. But he was more than just a traveling salesman. Much more. The equipment he sold and installed was equipped with special circuits that gave Alpha 1 monitors an idea of almost everything these companies did, who they accepted as customers, what they did with their profits, everything. And Tom knew that the problem Alpha was talking about was his wife of 5 years, Justin. Well, that is, 5 years until today. For about the last year and a half, she has had a whirlwind romance with Jake Carter, one of the senior partners at the law firm where she worked as a paralegal. Tom didn't know all the details until recently, primarily because he spent a lot of time traveling for work. But he noticed that something was wrong between them for a while. By the time he found out the details of the affair, Justine had announced her pregnancy. The lawyer Tom spoke to told him that no judge in this state would even consider a divorce while Justine was pregnant. If the child turns out to be his, he will be on the alimony hook, regardless of the prenuptial agreement they both signed. Unless he didn't have to worry about the house that already belonged to him before marriage. Tom clenched his teeth and remained silent throughout the pregnancy and almost lost his temper when she named the boy Jacob, after his donor. Immediately after the birth of the boy, Tom conducted a DNA test. He wasn't surprised to find out that the boy wasn't his. Looking at his watch, Tom realized that Justin was coming soon. He saw a man in a khaki jacket standing at the door of Mario's with a woman with a briefcase in her hands, and realized that this was for him. He crossed the street and parked. Grabbing his ubiquitous briefcase, he headed for the front door, giving a slight nod to the two people at the door. Tom had a quiet conversation with the woman at the door and was soon sitting in a corner booth. A khaki-clad man and a woman were sitting in another booth within earshot. Tom thanked the waitress for the water and started looking through the menu. He noticed Justine's presence at the table and put down the menu. He stood up as she slid into the booth across from him. "Good evening, Justin," he said in a neutral tone. "You look very good this evening." "Thanks, Tom," she said, smiling. "I don't remember seeing this dress before. Is this something new?" Yes, I just bought it. Do you like?" "Yes, it really sets off your eyes," he told her with a slight smile. After they finished the order, they heard music playing from another part of the establishment. Mario's was more than just a restaurant. There was also a dance floor and a cocktail bar. "It sounds like they're playing our song," Justine said. Tom knew that was her way of saying she wanted to dance. What the hell, he thought. It was their anniversary, even if it would be their last. "Do you want to dance?" "What is it?" he asked, getting up. "I don't mind," Justine said, holding out her hand. Tom took her by the hand and led her to the dance floor. They danced in each other's arms, but Justine couldn't help but notice that Tom kept some distance between them as if he could barely touch her. The song finally ended, and Tom escorted her back to the booth. By that time, food had been brought to them, and they began to eat. "Is something wrong, Tom?" Justine asked. "You seem like that restrained." "It's our anniversary. The thing is, your dress smells like it's been hanging in Jake Carter's closet for quite a while. And no matter how hard you try, you haven't been able to completely cleanse your body of its stench." "What?" Justine asked, offended that Tom was talking to her like that. "Jake Carter? Are you serious?" "What is it?" she asked, unsuccessfully trying to distract Tom. "Yes, you know Jake Carter, one of the senior partners at the law firm you work for," Tom said matter-of-factly. "Of course I know him," Justine said sarcastically. "I certainly hope so," Tom said. "After all, you've spent enough time in his bed." "What are you saying? This is outrageous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you talk to me like that," she protested. "Actually, sit down," Tom said, opening his briefcase. "You will sit and absorb any information that I decide to give you, especially after what you've been doing for the last 16 months. "What?" I don't understand what you're talking about. Of course you do. Let's start with this, he added, tossing a piece of paper in front of her. What is it? This is the result of your child's DNA test. According to this, Jacob is not my son. The next sheet is another DNA test that proves that the donor is none other than your lover, Jake Carter, the man you named Jacob after. How could you get Jake's DNA? She asked in confusion. It was easy. You brought it home with you at least 3 nights a week. But that's not all. He pulled out a thick folder and threw it on the table. What is it? A copy of every email, text message, and email message between you and Jake over the past 16 months. I hate to upset you, but there really is no such thing as online privacy. Okay, I admit it, she said. Jake and I messed around once, but that was it. It didn't mean anything. Completely. Really? Please go to page 75 and look through about half of the page until you find the passage that I have highlighted. Tell me what you see. She flipped through the pages until she came to the one that Tom was referring to. Her face paled as she read her own words to Jake. I'm waiting. I'm reading this, she said softly, out loud. I want to hear you say the words you wrote to him. She swallowed and looked back at the page. Please, she begged. Don't make me do this. Either you do it, or I do it. And if I do, I won't care who hears. Tears were streaming down her face. Justine looked at the paper again and began to read the words highlighted by Tom. I like what you're doing to me, Jake. I have never felt so wonderfully satisfied as I have in the last 16 months. In all the time we've been married, I don't remember you ever talking to me like that, Tom said. Is that all you have? What is it? She asked nervously. No, I have photos, audio, and video. Hours upon hours of video. You must really hate me, Justine said softly. Yes, of course. She looked up, shocked by what he had just said. It was like a slap in the face. There was a time when I would have taken a bullet for you. How long have you known? I had my suspicions even before you told me you were pregnant. I did some digging and got some evidence enough to satisfy the prenuptial agreement. However, by the time I talked to the lawyer, you informed me that you were pregnant. The lawyer told me unequivocally that no judge will even consider the issue of divorce until you give birth. Child support and all that. But now that Jacob is born, I have more than enough evidence to do my job. So, I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. Tom pointed to 2 people at the next table, who got up and walked over to their table. This nice man has something for you. Miss Justine Waters? The man asked. Yes, Justine said softly. The man put a thick paper envelope in front of her. You have been served. Have you been served? Justine asked, tears rolling down her face. Yes, Tom said, handing her a pen. Divorce papers. Look at them. They are exactly as we agreed in the prenuptial agreement. Sign them now, and I'm ready to give you a bank check $4 $145.63, the exact amount you had when we got married. Don't ask for anything else. I already know about your secret little slush fund. You can keep it for yourself. All your things have been delivered to your mother's house. Yes, she knows, and she is very disappointed in you. But she agreed to let you stay with her until you find a place to live. For the boy's sake, not for yours. But I don't want a divorce, Justine said. Please, Justin, don't insult my intelligence. Listen. He pulled out his phone and replayed her conversation with Jake earlier that day. Her eyes widened when she heard her own voice coming from Tom's phone. How? How did you get this? What is it? She asked. Good. I would have told you, but then I really would have had to shoot you on the spot. As much as I hate you right now, I really don't think it would be right to deprive little Jacob of his mother, Tom said with a smile that lacked warmth. I was nothing more than a food stamp and a guardian for you, while your child's daddy received all the benefits. Just so you know, your ticket has been punched. No more free lunches for you. At least from me. What about Jake? What is it? She asked. Oh, you're worried about daddy, aren't you? Fortunately, we live in a state that allows attachment alienation lawsuits. He's been served right now. It may or may not lead to something, but the main thing is the principle, isn't it? Anyway, his problems are just beginning. You see, I talked to Hamilton Parker, your managing partner, today. I showed him my evidence and expressed my opinion, displeasure, knowing that one of his senior partners is related to a subordinate. In particular, a subordinate who is my wife. At least for now. Mr. Parker was very upset and more than a little worried that Mr. Carter's antics might attract unwanted attention to his company, not to mention a rather significant financial burden. He agreed that it would be better if Mr. Carter was no longer associated with the firm and assured me that he would discuss this with his board of directors tonight. He also agreed that it would be wrong to punish you, especially since you are a mother with a newborn child. After all, Mr. Carter was your boss, so to speak, and he didn't want to expose the firm to a potential harassment lawsuit. Given your work history there, he agreed that it would be better to keep you on board, at least for a while. But I assure you, Mr. Carter's problems are just beginning, Tom said. How much do you know about your lover? I mean, do you really know? What are you talking about? Justine asked. I'm talking about his clients. The people he does business with. That is, who he really represents, and what he does when he doesn't stuff you into his mattress. What do you know about it? I don't know. He doesn't talk to me about anything like that. It's probably a good thing. Let's just say that your Jake Carter has a lot. Interesting clientele. One that attracts the attention of certain federal agencies. Agencies that can make a person disappear without a trace. Do you understand what I'm talking about? You're scaring me, Tom. And you should be afraid, he told her. Are you scared enough to stay away from Jake Carter? Because he's going down. And if you're anywhere near him when that happens, you'll go down too. Who are you, Tom? What is it? She asked. Really? He smiled, nodding his head at the papers in front of her. Sign the papers, Justin, and stop this farce right now. I've probably already told you too much. And by the way, your credit card has been canceled and your house key is no longer working. I changed the locks today while you were with Jake. I also took care of the bank account, so you no longer have access to it. Considering that you're saving half of your earnings into your own secret account, it shouldn't be a problem for you anyway. You knew everything, didn't you? What is it? She asked. Tom shrugged his shoulders. Defeated, Justine looked through the divorce papers and saw that they were exactly as Tom had said. She signed the papers and returned the pen to Tom. He smiled, picked up a pen, and looked through the papers. The process server witnessed the signatures, and the woman accompanying him notarized the signed documents. Tom handed the papers back to the man. I'll make sure this gets to your lawyer, Mr. Waters, he said. Thanks, Tom said. After they left, Tom turned back to Justine. I think you should give up your rings, he told her. Should I do that? I love these rings, she exclaimed. Obviously not enough to stay out of Jake Carter's bed. With tears in her eyes, Justine took off the rings and put them on the table. He put them in his pocket before addressing her. I believe that our business here is completed. Your conclusion? Is that all you can say? What else should I say? Tom asked. Why? Why did you do this on our anniversary? What is it? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Do you know how humiliating this is for me? Do you know how humiliating it was for me to find out that you were fooling around with me all this time? And how humiliating was it to find out that Jacob wasn't my son? And how humiliating was it when I found out that you made love to Carter on our anniversary? Don't blame me, Tom said. We're all done. Goodbye, Justin. I never want to see your face again. With that, he returned to his food, not looking at Justine, who was wiping her face. The waitress came over and asked if everything was okay. Yes, the food is excellent, as always, Tom said casually. I'll take care of the payment, and I suppose the lady will take her food with her, please. Yes, sir, the waitress said, going to get Justine's lunchbox. She returned a few minutes later and put Justine's leftovers in a styrofoam container. Tom handed the waitress his credit card and paid for the meal while Justine packed her things. When the waitress finished, Justine looked at Tom. Is that all? That's all, Tom said, waving his hand. She couldn't believe that he had just brushed her off. I'm sorry, Tom. He looked up from his meal before speaking. Well, we can both agree on that, he said. And now have a nice day. Tell your mom I said hi. Oh, and happy anniversary, he added with a slight smile. Justine, not believing the calm manner in which her husband actually just threw her out like trash, ran out from behind the table, sobbing. Tom smiled and went back to eating. He noticed that several customers were looking at him with disdain, but only smiled in response, shrugging his shoulders. He may have been calm and collected outwardly, but inside he was emotionally shattered. 5 years down the drain, at least the worst was over now. Tom managed to get through the next few days without incident. It wasn't easy. He had really loved Justine once, and it hurt him that he had to treat her like that. But he decided it was better to do it than to attack her the way he wanted to. Then came the day when he heard a knock on his front door. He was in his master bedroom upstairs and looked out the window to see Carter's sports car in the driveway. He had a hunch that something like this would happen, so he did some additions to his home security system at the insistence of Alpha One. He went downstairs and opened the door. Of course, it was Jake Carter, and he was angry. Tom backed away as Carter squeezed through. "You cost me my job, and Justin doesn't even want to talk to me." He advanced on Tom until he saw 15 tiny red dots suddenly appear on his shirt. Alarm. Invasion. An electronic voice shouted from speakers built into the walls. "Don't move." "What the hell is this?" the uninvited guest shouted. He raised his hands as if brushing away the dots. Suddenly, there was a staccato sound of a gunshot, similar to the shot from an air rifle. When Jake looked down, he saw 15 darts sticking out of his body. He reached up, but didn't do it. His eyes rolled back and his body collapsed to the floor. "I don't think you're going to be able to kill anyone today, Carter," Tom said calmly, grabbing his phone. He clicked on the icon on his phone and heard a man's voice. "Operator 715463. Clean up the 15th aisle," Tom said. "Clean up the 15th aisle." "Accepted," the man said. Tom pressed another icon, and the systems that had just fired a charge of tranquilizer darts at Jake turned and retracted back into the ceiling. When the doors of the systems were closed, no one could tell that there was anything there. Tom smiled, pleased that the new security system worked as advertised. A few minutes later, an unmarked white van pulled into the driveway. Several men in Tyvek suits entered the house and dragged Jake's limp body out. One of them grabbed Jake's keys and got into a sports car. A couple of minutes later, Jake's van and sports car were gone. Tom closed the door and went about his business. A few days later, after Tom bought a caramel mocha at a local coffee shop, he was stopped on the street by a large man in a dark suit and sunglasses. "Alpha One wants to talk to you, Mr. Waters," the man growled. "Now." "All right," Tom said, a little discouraged by the man's behavior. He followed the man to a long black limousine parked on the side of the street and got inside after the man opened the back door. "Waters, glad to see you're free," Alpha One said after the door had closed. Yes, sir. I have a lot to do," Tom said. Alpha One smiled and put a friendly hand on Tom's shoulder. "Please, Tom. When it's just the two of us, you can call me Regis," the one-eyed man said. "I wanted to give you the latest news about Mr. Carter. He sings like a canary." "Thanks, Alpha, Regis. So he's saying everything he needs to say?" Tom asked. "Oh, yes, he does it right off the bat," Regis said. "But now he's literally singing like a canary. It seems that the combination of these tranquilizer darts in the new security system and the serum we used to extract the information we needed turned his brains into applesauce. Right now he's swinging on a swing in a metal cage and chirping like a bird." "Oh," Tom said. Regis pulled an envelope out of his jacket pocket and handed it to Tom. "We got him to settle with you out of court before he got too much incompetent. He was so grateful to be alive that he agreed to much more than you wanted." "Well, that's good to hear," Tom said. "By the way, I want you to know that I'm really impressed with your new system," Regis said. "Now that we've got what we need from Carter, I'm glad you didn't use the .50 caliber chain pistols that I suggested." "Me too," Tom said. "I recently cleaned my carpet." Regis chuckled at that. "Have you heard anything about Justine?" Tom asked. "Yes. She's back to work, even though Mr. Parker keeps her on a very short leash." "Did you ever mention to her who you actually work for?" Regis asked. "No, Regis, I've never done that," Tom said. Regis nodded his head. He already knew this from his monitoring devices, but he wanted to hear it from Tom personally. "All right," Regis said. "Well, when your divorce is final, I would like you to come to the headquarters. I'd like to introduce you to your new partner." "A partner?" Tom asked. "I've never needed a partner before." "Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there, Tom?" Yes, sir. I suppose so," Tom said. "All right, Regis said. Then I'm looking forward to meeting you. Me too, Regis, Tom said. The door opened, signaling the end of the meeting. Tom got out of the limo and watched as the big man squeezed into the driver's seat. As the long car pulled into traffic, Tom wondered what Regis had in store for him.